Tusks up, Utah Mammoth fans, and welcome into your Utah Mammoth Daily update. So, training camp is rolling along, and the front office has made a big move in net. As of me recording this, the news dropped literally 4 minutes ago, so I had to cram it in, but we'll get into it here in a little bit. We've got preseason action against the Kings, and remember, I am a day delayed, so this was the first game against the Kings in Boise. And there's some long-term vision from the ownership group about what they're looking for, both on the roster and off the ice here in Utah. That's worth diving into. So today's show is going to cover all of that, and let's get started. So day 14 of training camp, and the grind is definitely showing. Coach Andre Turigny has been clear this stretch isn't just about players battling for jobs. It's about managing energy. He doesn't want guys entering the season worn down and tired. That's why we're seeing more rest days, and we're not seeing the number ones trotted out there in every preseason game. Especially against the Kings, we didn't see Keller, we didn't see Gunther. Obviously, Cooley was out, Kerfoot was out, Sergachev didn't play. So a lot of the number ones weren't out there, and Veggie did play, and he looked pretty solid. So that's why we didn't see them in the game. Coach Andre Turigny and GM Bill Armstrong want more management of bumps and bruises and a real emphasis on pacing, as opposed to getting everybody out there and have a really impressive-looking preseason record. You know, something like the Avalanche are doing. So veteran defenseman Ian Cole said it best. He noted the group looks faster and sharper than when camp opened, which is obviously the goal, and that the speed they're playing with now is encouraging. So according to Ian Cole, who's been around the block many times, the team is on schedule to show up opening night ready to play against the Avalanche. That's critical because Utah wants to play a fast, pressure-heavy style. And Coach Andre Turigny always says it, 200 feet. He wants players that'll play 200 feet. So the injury list is still part of the story, though. I did bring it up. Alex Kerfoot, going to be out for a while. Liam O'Brien is still not fully back. And then J.J. Peterka, Barrett Hayton, even Jack McBain a little bit. They're taking maintenance days, which is not out of the ordinary, and then Cooley as well. So the message from the staff is clear. It's not about grinding through pain right now. It's about being healthy and ready to go when the season begins. So the roster sits at 41 players. That number will keep shrinking. These next cuts aren't just about skill, they're about trust. Which players can the staff rely on if called into NHL minutes right away? And who still needs more development in Tucson? Those answers are coming very soon, and they'll shape not only the opening night roster, but the depth chart for the entire season. And also to see who's going to be brought up once the injury bug strikes, because it's hockey, it's going to happen. All right, so big trade here. I talked about Connor Ingram being placed on waivers a couple of days ago. Well, now there's an official trade for Connor Ingram up to Edmonton. That was his desired destination, and the Oilers wanted him as well. They just needed to work out the particulars. So the big news is the Mammoth have traded Connor Ingram to the Edmonton Oilers for future considerations. I would imagine some low draft picks, maybe like a minor league player or two, with Utah retaining about $800,000 of Ingram's salary. On the surface, this might look like just another depth move, but it's really about something bigger, honoring a player's request for a fresh start. Ingram has been one of the most open and courageous voices in hockey when it comes to mental health, sharing publicly about what he's dealt with in his career and in life. I love Connor Ingram. I wish him the best, and I hope he absolutely destroys it with the Oilers this season. Just not against Utah. Through it all, he's carried himself like a true professional, showing up, competing, and being transparent about his journey. Utah could have stashed him in the minors or let things drag out. Instead, they worked with him, listened to him, and found him a new opportunity with a franchise that wants him. That's why the Mammoth retained most of the salary, to make it easier for Edmonton to take him on. It's a move that shows class from the organization and a reminder that this franchise wants to build the right kind of culture, that these guys aren't just numbers or trading cards that they can flip around like they want, that they're real people. For Ingram, it's a chance to reset and carve out a role in Edmonton where he can continue his career and hopefully thrive in a different environment. For Utah, it's not about numbers or cap space. It's about treating a player like a person, and that's something fans notice and respect. That's why I'm calling this out. A class act from Ingram for how he handled it, and a class act from the Mammoth and Bill Armstrong and Ryan Smith for how they've responded. So just tests up for all of that. I want Connor Ingram to just do really well for the Oilers, just not against the Mammoth. And kudos to the front office of both teams, for both Edmonton and Utah, for coming together to agreeing to terms to get this done for a guy who deserves the best. So let's move on now to the preseason game against the Kings. On the ice, the Mammoth faced off in Boise and dropped 3-2 preseason decision, but there were some real positives in this one, especially in that second period. Cameron Hebig scored the first goal for the Mammoth, and it was Daniil Boot who really showed up and showed out in this game. He picked up the assist. I mean, he was all over the ice. It's exactly the kind of production you want to see from players fighting for roster spots. When depth guys and prospects show up on the score sheet, it creates tough but good problems for the coaching staff. The Kings ultimately won the game, and again, a preseason record just doesn't matter. It's how the team looks. And we've seen consistent growth and consistent competitiveness no matter who is being trotted out here, as opposed to what we saw earlier in the preseason. So we are seeing growth. It's closer scores. It's not the 6-1 blowouts that we were seeing before. So playing tight games against strong opponents, battling for 60 minutes, and seeing different players contribute is exactly what you want in September. Now into October, because we're October 1 now, or 2, I guess. Keep an eye on names like Hebig and Boot, Simashev, Iginla. If they can keep making noise in these games, they'll force management into some very interesting decisions heading into opening night. I was impressed by those young guys. Iginla was everywhere. He was putting pucks on net, causing awkward rebounds. Daniil Boot was everywhere on the ice. Simashev was diving into the corner during power plays, trying to keep the puck in the zone. I was impressed. I really was by those young guys. So I'm even on that mistake play in the second period or was it towards the end of the first period? I can't remember. But when Simashev skated back, he thought he had help behind him, and so that's why he overskated that turnover. He thought he did his job and he was going to have help come behind him, which I think in a regular season game with a full professional lineup, he would have. But in this preseason game, he didn't have that backup. His other defensemen had to cover more Kings that were joining in on the rush, so that's why that happened. And it was an awkward shot for Veggie to save because Veggie himself thought that somebody was going to be there. So overall, that happened, but I was impressed by everyone that did play for the most part. There were a couple of players in there that I think, yeah, they need more seasoning. They're going to get sent down. They'll be on the next cuts. I'm not going to name names because that's not my job to, but there were a few you could just tell. So we are getting closer to that opening night roster, and it'll be interesting to see if any of the rookies do actually make it. And now let's move on to the front office, and let's zoom out for the bigger picture. Beyond camp and preseason, Utah is already thinking about the future and has been basically since they got word from the NHL front offices that they were getting a team. Owners Ryan and Ashley Smith have talked openly about exploring an AHL franchise in Utah, potentially in Salt Lake or St. George or Logan, Utah. Who knows? Maybe even in Delta, Utah, in the center of the state. Who knows? That would give Utah the full hockey pyramid, NHL and AHL, with the Grizzlies moving over to New Jersey, so we won't have an ECHL team. But close enough. There are teams up at Boise. There's teams everywhere in the ECHL for the I almost said the Jazz, for the Mammoth to get. And so for a market that just got its NHL team, that's a huge sign of long-term commitment if they can secure an AHL franchise in the state of Utah somewhere. On top of that, the front office is closely monitoring the growth of the core. Logan Cooley, Dylan Gunther, and JJ Peterka are viewed as the drivers of this team's success. And Jack McBain is being challenged to step into a bigger role down the middle. The staff knows the top-end talent is there. Everybody in the league knows that. What they want to see is more consistency and more responsibility from the supporting cast and figuring out who that supporting cast is going to be. And when you look at moves like the Ingram trade, if you zoom out from the personal, it reinforces what this organization is trying to be. They're not just building a roster, they're building a culture. One that treats players right, and the way that Utah treated Connor Ingram will reverberate through the NHLPA. Trust me. It makes deliberate decisions. They didn't instantly just cut Connor Ingram when he asked out. They wanted to find a place for him that worked for both the franchise and the player, because they could have just cut him and Ingram could have gone and signed wherever. But it still worked for both sides and puts down roots the franchise for the long haul. So as we talk about camp cuts, goalie depth, and preseason games, keep in mind the bigger story. Utah isn't just here to participate. They're here to stay, and they're already planning for the future, and they want to win. I know I want to win. And that's going to do it for today's Utah Mammoth Daily. Training camp rolls on. The Mammoth showed some grit in the preseason against the Kings. Connor Ingram gets a fresh start in Edmonton thanks to a classy move on both sides. And ownership is laying down the foundation for a full-fledged hockey operation in Utah. The pieces are coming together, and the season is right around the corner. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Toss up.